There was a time when the Suez Canal almost never came to be, not because of engineering error, but because of rats. The Suez Canal is a passage connecting the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, and it is one of the most important trading routes in the world today. Welcome to Storytellers and Alchemists, where we re-enchant the world one story at a time. I am Amira, and today we explore the story of a young man whose creativity and boldness shaped the world in an unexpected way. There is a district in Old Cairo called Al-Sakakini. In it stands a beautiful mansion that still carries the name of its owner more than 100 years later. It is said that Sakakini was a young man from a Syrian refugee family who came to Cairo fleeing the oppression. He was still in his late teens at the time, with no formal education, just a young man trying to make a living. At that time, Egypt was digging the Suez Canal, connecting the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, but something went terribly wrong. As the digging began, the site was overrun by a stampede of rats, ferocious, multiplying, and unstoppable rats. They devoured supply, damaged machinery, and spread disease. Poison didn't work, traps didn't work, nothing worked. The situation became so desperate that newspapers at the time announced that the project might be abandoned altogether. Young Sakakini read the newspaper like everyone else, but he had an idea. Simple idea, almost too simple. What if we use cats? Now, imagine how people responded. Do you think no one thought of that before? Do you think they don't have cats in the Suez? He was ridiculed, dismissed, and belittled. But Sakakini didn't listen. He gathered stray cats from the streets of Cairo, placed them in cages, and transported them to the canal. There, he released the cats, and within 24 hours, the rats were gone, and the construction resumed. The news reached Khedive Ismail, the ruler of Egypt at the time. Impressed by Sakakini's creativity and boldness, he appointed him as his advisor. One project led to another, and a few years later, Sakakini was granted a mansion. And to this day, the mansion carries his name, Al-Sakakini. And the whole district actually is called Al-Sakakini district. When I read the story, one thing stayed with me. Don't be afraid to be different. You see, I grew up in my grandmother's house, a big home with doors always open. I was a little girl sitting in the corner listening to grown-up stories. Women came to my grandmother for advice, for support, for something they couldn't quite name, but knew they would find with her. Her kitchen was always alive. Pots are simmering, aromas filling the air. There was always food ready for guests, a neighbor, even the mailman. And that kitchen was her pharmacy. Stomach ache? Here's some cumin. Renal colic? Let's boil some parsley. Cough? Frankincense to the rescue. She had a remedy for everything, and somehow they worked. It was fascinating. One day I announced, when I grow up, I want to sit with people, listen to their story, and help them. I want to teach them how to turn their kitchen into an apothecary filled with healing power and aromas, like my grandmother did. But I was told that's not a profession. So I listened. At school, I loved creative writing. I had stories, ideas, opinions about everything. But my teacher did not like my ideas very much. I guess they were too out of the box. Writing is not your strength, she said. Stick to science. That's what you're good at. So I stopped writing. Then I found art. I loved drawing. Not what things look like, but what they feel like. I drew emotions, symbol, experiences. But I grew up surrounded by real artists. My father and my brother drew with a photographic precision. My art didn't look anyway like theirs. So I was told in the most friendly and caring way, art is not your thing. Stick to science. That's what you're good at. So again, I stopped drawing. I went to pharmacy, mainly because I was good at science, or so I've been told. But deep inside, I was still chasing something else, the herbs, the healing, the magic of my grandmother's kitchen. Only in pharmacy that magic disappeared. Plants were reduced to Latin names, and healing became chemical formulas. When I tried to express what I felt missing in all this scenario, no one understood what I was talking about. So, again, I stayed part of the system. I graduated top of my class and became a teaching assistant. I love biochemistry and I love pharmacy, by the way. I'm not underestimating what they're doing, they're saving lives. But there always this thing missing. Something was missing. And I love teaching, I love lab work, but something again was missing. Some part of me I had left behind in my grandmother's house when I abandoned the stories, the herbs, the sketchbook, and the writing journal. Then life interrupted, as it always does. I was finishing my master's degree when I was told I had to return from maternity leave immediately or my thesis would not be accepted. I had two young children at the time. I couldn't do it, and I had to resign. I cried for days. I felt like everything I had dreamed of was taken away. But slowly, another question emerged. Were those ever really my dreams? That interruption gave me space, a space to return to what I have abandoned. I studied nutrition and then natural health, then spiritual care and then psychotherapy, all that I was actually passionate about. And slowly I found it again, the stories, the herbs, the expressive art, not as separate things, but as one path, fitting all together in a way I couldn't have planned ever. My journey taught me this. Don't be afraid to be different, and don't let other people define your path for you. But it also taught me something very important. Don't wait for your passion to come to you on a silver platter. Follow the trail, like a treasure hunt. When I loved herbs as a child, I didn't know where it would lead. When I listened to women's story, I didn't know it was my training actually. When I was doodling marks and symbol, I thought these were random scribbles like everyone told me. But now I see that none of it was wasted. Your passion is not something you find in a workshop or weekend retreat. It is something you uncover over a lifetime. The clues are always here. You find them in what moves you, in what stays with you, and in what you keep returning to again and again and again. The answer is in keeping the momentum, following the thread, and trusting what quietly calls you. And if you ever doubt, remember the story of Sakakini. The idea that was too obvious, too simple, the idea that everyone dismissed, was the idea that changed the world as we see today. Don't be afraid to be different. Until we meet again, may the stories you encounter guide you back to the quiet wisdom within.